Hey, what's going on, everyone? And also, good morning. Let me make sure you know what I say here. Let me make sure I can see myself on YouTube. Okay, I don't see my red live icon. Let me refresh my screen here. All right, thank you, YouTube. There is my red icon. I am on a little bit later this morning than I wanted to be on. Let me mute that. And that's because I went to bed a little bit later. You go to bed later, you wake up later, you get your day started later. Uh, Officer Charles Faulkner wanted to smoke cigars last night, so he said, "Come on up to the Baltimore area and partake." And this we're in this back to the office thing at my current federal position, and I think we're all looking to see what's going to happen in the next couple of months. Maybe I'll still be a federal employee. Maybe I'll be off doing something else. Maybe I'll be out on the beach somewhere. I don't know. But right now, the weeks are pretty brutal because you're up having to go in the office. Oh, my microphone. I forgot one of my main co stars here. Boom. For every live stream, this guy should be right here. All right. Um, so yeah, so the weeks are brutal now. I mean, we're back in the office, and you're up. I have business related to my book, related to my blog, related to my content creation, going over personal finances. So all that stuff has to get done now before going into the office, because when I get home from the office, I'm pretty much wiped. I can do one or two things here on the computer, but after being on the computer and having slogged into the office and then having to make the slog, I think that's the right word, from the office by 7 o'clock at night, I am wiped. I just want to eat and just relax. So the weeks are brutal. And then now you have to get your exercise in and get your workouts in. So those have to come before going to work. So I'm up pretty much every day now at 5 in the morning. And then if it's a workout day, I'm up and I'm out the door to the gym for about an hour. I have to come back, shower, get my lunch and my food together for the day, and then it's out the door on the metro to downtown DC. T. Riddler, you said what's it like? How do you like being back in the office? As with everything, there are positives and negatives. Obviously, when you work at home, you're here, and so you just get out of your bed, turn on your computer, and you're working, quote unquote. Some people are, but you're also isolated. So there is value to being in person because you get to interact with people, you get to see people, you get to meet new people, and as a newly published author, that's advantageous for me. But it's just different. So there are positives and negatives to both. I think a lot of us who were a part of the federal government before the World Health Crisis at that time, under this president, we were still allowed to telework on Mondays and Fridays. So I think that a lot of us wanted that back. But right now, it's the 5 days in. Fortunately, I still have my compressed schedule, so I will be compressed and off next Friday. But the weeks are brutal. So Officer Faulkner said, "Hey, why don't you come up to and smoke some cigars? We have a lounge that we like going to up in Towson, Maryland." And so after a long work day and being in the gym at 5 in the morning, yeah, it was just a much longer day. So I had to make the commute up to the Baltimore area, and I was just struggling and hanging on around midnight. Around midnight, around 11:30, I was just in the cigar lounge, just like this. And then it was like, all right, one gentleman left, and I said, all right, Charles, I got to go too. And then that drive back was brutal. But I digress. I'm saying this to say that I was up later. I woke up later, so I'm starting later. So my goal is to take off and land within an hour because time time is a critical component of physics and science, and it is finite. And when you have when you're slogging into the office every day and you have a 2-day weekend, you only have a finite amount of time to get the things done that you need to get done. So um last week was my book signing in Buffalo. I'll talk a little bit about that some other time. It was good. It was exciting. Hopefully that'll be uh, uh, the first of many. That's why I wasn't on last Saturday morning because I was too busy getting stuff together and getting my mind right for that. But I forgot that me and the nameless protagonist were supposed to link up and talk about the Mouse Utopia here on my platform. He's talked about it quite a bit on his platform and with others. But he pinged me during the week and said, hey, are we still doing this? And I said, hey, time got away from me. So right now, me and the nameless protagonist, we're planning to talk about the Mouse Utopia experiments next Saturday. So look out for that. All right, let me play the intro. And then we're going to talk a little bit about, I'm late here. I just told you why. My book signing, I wasn't able to chime in last week. But I'm going to play something related to Gayle King and Katy Perry and Jeff Bezos's fiance. Their trip into space as astronauts. I'm going to play something regarding that. And then we're going to just listen to Terrence Howard talk science a little bit more. My brother Amal pinged me and says, they made fun of him, but Terrence Howard has a lot of important things to say. So my brother sent me an interview from Demystify Sci. We're just going to listen to a little bit of what Terrence has to say about science and physics and where it is. And then I'm going to wrap the stream up. But I am going to continue the series about what it would like to die, what it would be like to die on every planet. And today we're going to look at what it would be like to die on Mars. So I'll see you guys on the other side of the intro. And I'll see you on the other side of the intro. If you guys want to make a donation, my Cash App and PayPal, all that stuff is on the ticker. I run that for promoting my book, but my Cash App and PayPal are there as well. All right, I'll see you guys on the other side. Let me know what you think about any of this. Have you seen anything in the science world that that is new and novel today, or that you might want to hear about at some point? Let me know.
So, Anwar, I see you have the periodic tables on your chest.
Mm-hmm.
So what's that all about? Why are you walking around with a chemistry chart on your chest?
Well, Cheryl, so this channel is a STEM channel. So when I was conceiving of it and figuring out how to grow it, I figured I should have some T-shirts to go with it. So the periodic table is critical to most of the scientific fields.
Welcome to Big Discussions 76, Science and Technology. Science and technology are all around us, all of the time, and there are always science and technology stories to tell.
Hey guys, thank you for those of you who humored me. I did put the picture, I just saw myself freeze there. I did put the picture of the mouse in the mouse trap this week. I thought about it afterwards and I said, maybe I shouldn't have shown that picture. If someone like Ray Alexander already thinks my place looks inappropriate, then that definitely, might scare some people off. But it's a science channel. I talked about the physics and the biology surrounding mouse traps, and that is the end result of setting up a traditional snap trap. So one varmint is down. That doesn't mean that there aren't others. But anyway, so on this channel, before we get into the videos, shout out to the Arlette Muley. I do encourage reading and scholarship here on this channel. Reading is cool, even though some don't think it's cool. Learning is cool. Information is cool. So I'm reading right now, one of the books I'm reading is The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. Some of you may have seen this before. And it says how the great rewiring of childhood is causing an epidemic of mental illness. So one of the central theses, I think that's the right plural use of that word, is that these things are damaging younger people. Younger people are not growing and developing in the ways that they have traditionally grown and developed, and are not developing the skills needed to navigate the world. So I was just there's a lot of science in this book, and I'm going to read something very, very brief from chapter. This is all spur of the moment, by the way. I wasn't thinking about this 5-10 minutes ago, but this is from chapter 3, Discover Mode and the Need for Risky Play. So for kids who grew up, so he designates an era of child what do you call it? Play-based childhoods versus phone-based childhoods. He delineates that in this book. So most of us, I think, T-Riddler, I don't know how old you are, but I think the rest of the guys are Gen Xers. We had play-based childhoods. So we were out doing things, even as we had our Nintendos and our Segas, and even as we were watching Voltron and Transformers, we were out playing and riding bikes and doing different things. Kids today, as soon as they can pick up things, they're picking up these. So they're missing out on a lot of key developmental processes, and that's one of the things I keep calling him Dr. Haidt. I don't know if he's Dr. Haidt. That's one of the things Mr. Haidt keeps emphasizing early on in this book. One quick paragraph, and then we'll move on. So Sand, Setter, and Kinnear analyzed the kinds of risks that children seek out when adults give them some freedom. And they found 6. Heights, such as climbing trees or playground structures. High speed, such as swinging or going down fast slides. Dangerous tools, such as hammers and drills. Dangerous elements, such as experimenting with fire. Rough and tumble play, such as wrestling. I keep wanting to say doctor. I think it's Dr. Warren Farrell. Warren Farrell, in his book, is it Of Boys and Men? The Boy Crisis. I think that was his book, The Boy Crisis. One of the things he emphasized in his book is that fathers are necessary and good for children in terms of rough and tumble play. Okay, so fathers are the parent that will do the rough and tumble play more often than the mothers will. So rough and tumble play is critical for a child's development. Okay. So rough and tumble play, such as wrestling, and disappearing, hiding, wandering away, potentially getting lost or separated. Okay, these are all critical experiences for young people. These are the major types of thrills that children need. They'll get them for themselves unless adults stop them, which we did in the 1990s. Note that video games offer none of these risks, even though games such as Fortnite show avatars doing all 3 or 4. Oops. Okay, so avatars, let me start that sentence over again. Note that video games offer none of these risks, even though games such as Fortnite show avatars doing all of them. We are embodied creatures. Children should learn how to manage their bodies in the physical world before they start spending large amounts of time in the virtual world. That's interesting because it seems like Zuckerberg and the tech giants, they're pushing us, young people in particular, more towards a virtual world. And with I think me and Nameless, we're going to talk about transhumanism. That's bound to come up when we talk, but they're pushing things more towards that. So you might get to a place where young people and human beings are developing in a totally different way without those key markers that I just described. Well, Professor, thank you everybody who's here. Thank you to everybody who keeps coming back. Thank you to everyone who likes this content. Science is not for everybody, and I think that is indicated by where the United States is in the world relative to countries like China. So, Will Professor says, I think the cell phone is not the issue. Historically speaking, reading went from looking up to where we are now. Interpretation and comprehension is where I think the struggle is. Go Professor. Thank you for that, Go Professor. I'm going to play this video about what it would be like to die on Mars. I think this goes through every planet, and then we'll talk about what Dr. Thomas Sowell thought about Gayle King going into space, and then we'll end with a few words from Terrence Howard. Give me 1 second here, guys. Keep letting me know what you think there. Have you guys seen any interesting science stories this week? I know that, and I should probably be discreet with this, but Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is now the head of HHS, Health and Human Services. So he's trying to do big things over there. I heard a lot about removing industrial chemicals and artificial chemicals from food. So there's a lot happening right now. I'm just sharing this over on my original Big Discussions channel. Technology, I haven't weighed in on the whole Shannon Sharp thing, but there's a technology piece in that as well, in terms of the presence of OnlyFans and taping phone conversations and capturing text messages. That is in part a technology story as well. Okay. What would it be like to die on Mars? Fair use, fair use. Fair use, fair use.
Side of Mercury rates a 2 out of 10 from me. All right, let's look at Mars. The red planet sounds a lot more promising. Where else in the solar system would you want to establish a human base? Well, not so fast. Mars sits just outside the sun's habitable zone.
So the habitable zone, the Earth is the third planet out from the sun, so it's in that right space for life, for a breathable atmosphere, to have all three phases of water, temperature. The Earth is in that right spot for life as we know it, and this is significant because this is one of the things Mr. Musk, who's stepping away from Doge, it seems, this is one of his big projects, sending humans to Mars. Fair use, fair use.
It doesn't have water or a magnetosphere. Its atmosphere is incredibly thin. It's not a place you could settle into comfortably.
What do you mean? Mars is great.
That is, until you try to breathe on it. On Mars, the air is mostly made up of carbon dioxide. You'd have to keep your spacesuit on at all times, because if you didn't, you'd die.
Spacesuit breach detected.
It only takes a minor suit malfunction for Mars to kill you. The first few seconds of inhaling the air on Mars would feel confusing.
What's confusing about this? I'm dying.
Auto insurance all seems the same until it's time to use it. With USAA, it's easy to file.
Neutral.
You'd be gasping for oxygen and starting to breathe more rapidly. At the same time, your breached spacesuit would start to decompress. Man, that would be truly awful. The atmospheric pressure on Mars is only 0.6% of what you have on Earth. As soon as your spacesuit gave in, all the pressure inside it, the pressure keeping you alive, would escape.
Warning. Danger of embolism. Warning.
Embolism is what happens next. As your suit's pressure suddenly dropped, your body would experience painful, blood-boiling conditions.
You know, guys, I just made a connection here. So in the clip I'm going to show you, one of the controversial things that Gayle King said is that I think she called her and the group astronauts. Her and that group of ladies who went up into space, she called them astronauts. But there's a lot of training, and a lot of people have said this, there's a lot of training and knowledge and basic knowledge and understanding you have to have in order to be an astronaut. So they were, well, we'll let Time of Sowell talk about it, but I just made the connection between this and that. There's a lot of specialized training and knowledge that's required to be an astronaut. Quick roll call here. AB Media, thank you for being here. Go Professor, thank you for being here. T Riddler, thank you for being here. I think Tony, Tony, he says, good morning, everyone. And Andre's passing through. And also Jibba Jabba 809. Thank you all for being here. I just wanted to acknowledge everybody. Fair use, fair use. This one is almost done.
You see, your blood and other bodily fluids have gases inside them. Exposed to the low-pressure environment on Mars, these gases would boil. Your skin would swell and puff up. After about 7 minutes, you'd be dead. This is going to be pretty graphic. Somebody put a warning on the screen. Mars would give you hope and then gruesomely kill you the first chance it got. I'd seriously reconsider coming here, because even if you made absolutely sure that your spacesuit was safe and wouldn't suffer a life-ending breach, Mars will find another way to wipe you off its face. And that other way would be dust storms.
By the way, guys, what he just described is very, very significant, because even when you do naval researchers, I was going to say Navy SEALs, but those are combat troops. But naval researchers, those going to the bottom of the ocean to look at the Titanic, there's an equilibration procedure that deep divers have to use to come back to the surface of the Earth, because if they come too quickly, the pressure at the bottom of the ocean is very, very different. So I think it's called the bends. So if they come up too early, that same thing will happen. Your blood vessels will pop because the air is coming out too quickly. I think I got that right. But pressure, atmospheric pressure, where your body is, and if you go into different environments, that matters, and you have to re-equilibrate to standard temperature and pressure. Fair use, fair use.
Dust storms on Mars are wild. They can cover the entire planet, and they last for weeks or even months.
Kissy crap in here.
It's not that those storms are strong, they're not, but the dust particles are so fine that they get into your spacesuit easily.
If you guys, how many of you guys out here saw The Martian with Matt Damon and Mike Pena and Chiwetel Ejiofor, among others? The spoiler here: the opening of The Martian starts with a dust storm. Okay, and that's how Mark Watney gets left on Mars. A dust storm. Fair use, fair use.
Scratch it from the inside.
Oh man, what? Matt Damon can do this, so can I. Come on.
These fine particles would clog your air filters and do all kinds of damage to your equipment, from cutting off your life support systems to knocking out your heat regulation.
Warning. 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 Oxygen system failure.
Well, that's Mars for you. I give it a 6 out of 10 just for the epicness of this whole death situation. Oh, and for giving you a chance to live here. Just maybe not for too long.
I'd give Mars a 0.
There's one more rocky planet lurking.
All right, that's enough of that for this week. We're gonna work through each one. Me and Nameless, I know we're gonna talk for a while, so maybe I'll suspend this exercise for something for another week afterwards. But that's Mars, and keep in mind, again, this is a big deal. This is something Elon, Mr. Musk, is working on right now and is fascinated with right now, going to Mars. So that's a little sample of what it would be like. So they've got to be thinking about what the conditions are like there if you're going to put humans there. So you have dust storms and you have an atmospheric pressure that's very different than the one that we have here on the planet Earth. Okay, so let's move on. So let's talk about astronauts and whether or not Gayle King and Katy Perry and Jeff Bezos' fiance, whether or not those are actual astronauts. I'm a week behind, as I described at my book signing last week. But a lot of people have weighed in on this. Passport OG, he did a really good video on this. Shout out to the GOAT. He makes really, really good and concise content using pop culture references of all kinds. And a lot of people weighed in on this. And I think one of the controversial aspects of this is that Gayle wanted to be acknowledged as an astronaut. She said, "We're astronauts. Don't minimize what we just did. 6 women, I think it was 6, just went up into space. Okay, don't minimize this accomplishment." And Katy Perry went on to say, "Well, this is a monumental moment for girls. It's going to inspire girls, X, Y, and Z." But then there's another contingency of people who said, "Well, this contingency of people said, well, what did you actually accomplish? You went up as passengers without spacesuits, with very little training, for what, 30 minutes at most? What have you done? What have you actually done?" Okay. Speaking of the GOAT, there he is right there in the chat. Salute to Passport OG. And he made a really good video on this. But I watched one by the much maligned, the highly respected, but also much maligned Dr. Thomas Sowell. Okay. Dr. Thomas Sowell has his fans. He has his detractors. But that's everybody. Everybody has fans and detractors and supporters. I think the key is whether or not you like someone, to pick out the important parts of what they say and what they have to offer. Okay, I think that's a critical piece of life. Some people, quote unquote, like to throw out the baby with the bathwater. So even if that person you dislike says something meaningful because they said it, it's meaningless. But yeah, Dr. Thomas Sowell is a writer, an economist, an intellectual. Well, 2 criticisms of him. He hasn't really done a lot on economics recently. And also, he only talks about, well, I'm African American, I'm ADOS, you guys in the chat are as well. Another major criticism of Dr. Thomas Sowell is that he talks about the issues and the elements of the Black community, but he only does it in front of non-Black audiences. So he's got a lot of detractors, but I've enjoyed the books of his that I've read, and I enjoy his commentary on the Hoover Institute and other platforms. So let's see what Dr. Thomas Sowell had to say about Gayle King's trip into outer space. Dr. Thomas Sowell.
Clearing out your bowels almost instantly.
Fair use. Fair use. Fair use. Jibba Jabba 809 says, chewing the meat and spitting out the bone is critical thinking, which a lot of people just don't have these days. Just don't have these days. It's fascinating. The late Kevin Samuels, just saying that name was gonna make some people want to fight me. But it's amazing to hear people say that he was right about this, he was right about that, and even when women say he was right about this, he was right about that, he was ahead of his time. But this isn't about him; it's about this. Okay, with Jibba Jabba 809 said, chewing the meat and spitting out the bone is critical thinking, and a lot of people today lack this. All right, what say you, Dr. Thomas Sowell, about Gayle King's journey into space? You guys keep letting me know what you think there in the chat.
Katie! Woo! Let me begin by addressing the intellectual dishonesty of branding Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin all-women flight as a milestone for women in space. This was no milestone. It was a carefully orchestrated public relations stunt, a brief suborbital joyride lasting barely 10 minutes, dressed up in the garb of progress. In my book, The Vision of the Anointed, I wrote, "The anointed do not demand empirical validation, only moral affirmation. This flight is a textbook case of that principle."
So the anointed only crave. Let's listen to that again. And I want to read that book. I want to read this book. And this is critical because we are in this era of virtue signaling. Fair use.
The Vision of the Anointed, I wrote, "The anointed do not demand empirical validation, only moral affirmation."
They don't demand empirical validation, only moral affirmation. Okay, so forget what the data says is what you're saying, and what is what you're saying and is what you're asserting. Is that making us feel better? Does this square with our sensibilities and our ideas and our idealistic thoughts for how things are and how things should be? Forget about the data. Okay, science is the opposite. Science embraces empiricism. And I actually told a younger cousin this last week. He's a 12-year-old. I said, science is about the numbers and the data. It's not about your feelings. It's not about feelings. It's not about feelings. Okay, it's about the numbers, what you can prove. All right. And by the way, in the visually, this is very clever what the Dr. Sowell and the producers of this video, this is very clever what they did, because they're using a shot there of a female astronaut in space. So this is not a women can't go to space video. Okay, it's about what the actual achievement is, and what Gayle and Katy Perry and the others, what they did versus what actual female astronauts do. Okay, and what it takes to be an astronaut. All right. I digress again.
This flight is a textbook case of that principle. It offered moral affirmation to those eager to applaud symbolic gestures, but it contributed nothing to the advancement of space exploration, scientific knowledge, or technological innovation. The campaign's promoters leaned heavily on the rhetoric of empowerment, claiming it shattered barriers for women. But what barriers were shattered by sending a group of celebrities and influencers, selected for their storytelling abilities rather than their expertise, on a fully automated trip to the edge of space? This is the kind of semantic gymnastics I've long criticized, where words like historic and trailblazing are stretched beyond recognition to fit an ideological narrative. Real progress requires substance, not slogan. The flight's superiority without the inconvenience of empirical evidence.
Real progress focuses on darn. That's how you know I'm tired, because I can't even articulate what he just said 2 seconds ago. But fortunately, I can just go to this little bar here and rewind this. That was powerful what he just said.
Blazing are stretched beyond recognition to fit an ideological narrative. Real progress requires substance, not slogan. The flight's organizers and their media allies sought to create a sense of moral superiority without the inconvenience of empirical evidence. It's the sort of thing that thrives in a culture more concerned with appearances than outcomes, where the applause of the anointed matters more than the reality of achievement. Now, let's contrast this 10-minute spectacle with the genuine achievements of women in space history, women like Valentina Tereshkova, Sally Ride, and Mae Jemison, whose contributions were built on years of grueling preparation and tangible results. Tereshkova, the first woman in space in 1963, was a factory worker and parachutist who endured rigorous cosmonaut training to orbit Earth 48 times over 3 days. Sally Ride, a physicist with a PhD from Stanford, became the first American woman in space in 1983, not as a passenger, but as a mission specialist, integral to the shuttle's operations. Mae Jemison, a medical doctor and engineer, flew in 1992, conducting experiments that advanced our understanding of space. These women didn't just go for a ride, they were pioneers who faced real risks and made measurable contributions to humanity's reach into the cosmos. To compare their legacy to a media-driven event featuring pop stars and TV personalities is not just misguided, it's insulting. It cheapens the sacrifices of those who earned their place in history through sweat, intellect, and courage. Calling this Blue Origin crew astronauts after a brief autopiloted trip to 62 miles up is like calling someone a marathon runner for jogging around the block. It's a mockery of the discipline and dedication that define true excellence in space exploration.
Okay, so he just gave us a history lesson there on who some of the earliest and most notable female astronauts were. So for those who are watching this and saying, Dr. Dunbar, you're engaging in misogyny. Nope, we're just talking about the significance of what happened versus what it really means to be an astronaut, and what the true female astronauts had to do to earn that role. I'm going to read a comment here from Sal. Sal says, to Go Professor, the U.S. literacy levels are low, considering roughly 37.7% of the population earned a bachelor's degree. The average reading levels are in the 6th to 8th grade levels. He says, and we are below the international literacy average. And then Love Gun says they use William Lute's doublespeak technique. Trailblazing can be referenced as deterring from the considered normal. Thank you for that.
Kind of rhetorical inflation diminishes the very legacy it claims to honor. And it's precisely the sort of thing I've warned about when symbolic gestures are allowed to overshadow substantive reality.
Here's a 30-second bedtime ritual you can do to awaken your pineal gland. Did you know that your pineal gland's inability...
The ideological thrust of this campaign is equally troubling, rooted as it is in the race and gender baiting tactics of identity politics. As I've argued in Intellectuals in Society, identity politics is often less about uplifting individuals and more about shielding mediocrity from scrutiny by framing criticism as prejudice. This flight, with its carefully curated all-female crew and emphasis on diversity, complete with claims of firsts for various ethnic groups, was designed to leverage race and gender as tools of moral superiority. The selection of participants like Katy Perry, Gayle King, and Lauren Sanchez wasn't based on their contributions to aerospace, but on their ability to amplify a narrative. This isn't empowerment, it's exploitation of identity for branding purposes.
So, Sal, I think what you just described, where we are, I think what he just described feeds into that. I'm going to play that one more time.
Precisely the sort of thing I've warned about when symbolic gestures are allowed to overshadow substantive reality. The ideological thrust of this campaign is equally troubling, rooted as it is in the race and gender baiting tactics of identity politics. As I've argued in Intellectuals in Society, identity politics is often less about uplifting individuals and more about shielding mediocrity from scrutiny by framing criticism as prejudice. This flight, with its carefully curated all-female crew and emphasis on diversity, complete with claims of firsts for various ethnic groups, was designed to leverage race and gender as tools of moral superiority. The selection of participants like Katy Perry, Gayle King, and Lauren Sanchez wasn't based on their contributions to aerospace, but on their ability to amplify a narrative. This isn't empowerment, it's exploitation of identity for branding purposes. By focusing on demographics over qualifications, the campaign sidesteps the hard questions about its scientific or technological value. If you criticize the flight's lack of substance, you risk being labeled as opposing progress or inclusion. This is a tactic I've seen time and again. Use the moral weight of race and gender to deflect accountability. But progress isn't achieved by checking boxes or crafting press releases. It's achieved through competence and results. The irony is that such stunts often undermine the very groups they claim to champion, suggesting that women or minorities need symbolic gestures rather than opportunities to compete on equal terms. That's not equality, it's condescension. At its core, this was a marketing stunt masquerading as progress. A point I made in Intellectuals in Society when I noted the great problem of the intellectual is that he is judged by how well he says things, not by how well they work. Blue Origin's goal wasn't to advance space exploration, but to generate buzz for its space tourism business.
So their goal was not to further space exploration, but to generate buzz for their space tourism business. Okay, and he also noted that intellectuals, what they say sounds good, but their ideas don't always yield results that are good. Fair use, fair use. Passport OG says, or Love Gun says, they can be looked at as rituals for making the future behavior acceptable. Passport OG says, this is why you can't discuss politics seriously in public. Everything is a personal attack because when people don't understand / agree, they feel attacked. I agree with that. And then Love Gun says, at Passport OG, I am aloof in public. Those in the know can usually spot what I'm doing and then approach. No need to raise your power level in a time of decline.
The presence of a live stream hosted by a sportscaster, the inclusion of celebrities watching from the ground, and the media's breathless coverage all point to a carefully choreographed spectacle. The media, as is often the case, played a complicit role, echoing the narrative of a historic event without scrutinizing its substance. Outlets framed it as a triumph for feminism and diversity, conveniently ignoring that it offered no new technology, no scientific breakthroughs, and no meaningful expansion of human capability in space. This is the collusion I've long criticized, where intellectuals and their media allies promote visions that align with their ideological preferences rather than the truth. The flight's true purpose was to burnish Blue Origin's brand and appeal to a demographic eager to see themselves reflected in high-profile events. But branding isn't progress, and publicity is an achievement. The resources spent on this stunt could have funded research or training programs that actually moved the needle for women in STEM or space exploration. Instead, we got a photo op at 62 miles, applauded by those more interested in feelings than facts. Now, let me be clear. I have no issue with the free market aspect of this flight.
I thought it was interesting what he said right there, that the money spent on this could have been used to actually further women's participation and women's involvement in aerospace. Okay.
If wealthy individuals want to spend their money on a 10-minute trip to the edge of space, that's their prerogative. The free market allows people to allocate their resources as they see fit. And I've never argued otherwise. Blue Origin is a private company and its customers can choose to participate in its offerings. The problem arises when this voluntary spending is dressed up as a scientific or moral breakthrough, misleading the public about its true nature. This wasn't a mission to advance humanity's understanding of the universe. It was a commercial transaction packaged as a social justice victory. The deception lies in the narrative, not the market. When you claim that a recreational jaunt is a giant leap for women, you're not just selling tickets, you're selling a lie. And that lie has consequences, particularly when it's used to redefine what counts as achievement in a field as demanding as space exploration. This brings me to the broader cultural cost of such stunts, the erosion of standards and public trust.
The erosion of standards and public trust. I think this is where he goes into, are you putting people into place just because of identity, or because they have earned it and they've shown the proficiency to do calculus and to calculate flight paths and what it would take to get a payload into space. But let's hear what Dr. Sowell has to say about this part of it.
When we redefine excellence in terms of inclusion or optics rather than competence, we undermine the very foundations of progress.
It's very important to listen first, talk second.
Hold on.
That's counterintuitive for most.
Calling this crew astronauts after a brief automated flight devalues the title earned by those who've dedicated their lives to mastering the complexities of space. It's part of a larger trend I've warned about, where standards are lowered in the name of fairness or representation. We see it in education with grade inflation. We see it in workplaces with quotas overshadowing merit. And now we see it in space, where a 10-minute joyride is equated with missions that required years of preparation and risk. This isn't just a semantic issue, it's a cultural one. When you dilute the meaning of excellence, you erode public trust in the institutions and fields that rely on it.
So Dr. Sowell, we're almost at the end of this, guys. His gospel is pretty big on not lowering standards. Okay, are we lowering the standards for idealistic narratives and ideas? And what are the dangers of lowering standards? Well, if you're lowering the standards and the person is building a bridge, or they're designing an aircraft, or they're building a skyscraper and they're not qualified and they don't have a mastery of the engineering or the calculus or the physics, then yeah, you're putting lives at danger. So he's very, very big on not lowering standards. And I wouldn't want to be admitted to something, or I wouldn't want that hanging over me, that I didn't do the work and that I'm only there because of my cultural background or my complexion. So not lowering standards. This one is just about done. So here we go. Fair use.
Space exploration, once a symbol of human ingenuity and perseverance, risks becoming another stage for performative gestures. The public isn't fooled forever. They'll eventually see through the rhetoric and question why we're celebrating mediocrity over mastery. That's a dangerous path, one that could diminish our collective ambition to push beyond our current frontiers. Let me address the comment attributed to Katy Perry, who reportedly said something along the lines of, "The trip will encourage young girls to go into space in the future with no limitation," in reference to this flight. The irony here is palpable. It's easy to proclaim there are no limitations when you're sitting atop a rocket built by thousands of engineers and scientists who faced very real limitations, technical, financial, and physical, to make that moment possible. Perry's statement, like the campaign itself, glosses over the hard work and expertise required to even reach the edge of space. And let's not ignore the economic reality. The cost of a seat on this flight, estimated in the hundreds of thousands, is far beyond the reach of the average person, including the middleman who might dream of such an experience. This isn't a triumph over limitations. It's a privilege reserved for the elite, cloaked in the language of universal empowerment. The disconnect between the rhetoric and the reality is precisely what I've criticized when symbolic gestures are used to obscure practical truths. If there are truly no limitations, why isn't this opportunity accessible to the millions of women who lack the wealth or connections to buy a ticket? The answer exposes the campaign for what it is, a spectacle for the few, not a victory for the many.
Once again, I want to applaud Dr. Sowell and the production team. Okay, this is not a women should go back in the kitchen and women should just run around the house barefoot and pregnant thing. They shouldn't be involved. Over this essay, they've used this visual of a female astronaut here. I don't know if she's a United States astronaut or an Israeli or a Soviet astronaut from the Eastern Bloc, but that's not what this is. It's questioning the validity of that this Blue Origin thing that we just saw. Okay, and I think there are some words from Gayle at the beginning defending. I'm sorry, some words from Gayle at the ending of this. So it's coming up defending the importance of this event. Fair use, fair use.
In conclusion, let me restate a core truth. You cannot redistribute achievement through rhetoric. Real progress in space, as in any field, comes through work, merit, and a relentless commitment to reality, not through stunts designed to impress the media crowd or garner headlines. This Blue Origin flight, with its focus on symbolism, identity politics, and media hype, represents a step backward from the principles of excellence that have driven humanity to the stars. It's a reminder that we must demand substance over style, merit over optics, and truth over illusion. The legacy of women like Tereshkova, Wright, and Jemison isn't honored by diluting the standards they met. It's honored by upholding those standards and inspiring the next generation to surpass them. Until we recommit to that vision, we'll continue to see more of these hollow gestures, each one a distraction from the hard, unglamorous work of real progress. Let's not confuse a photo op with a frontier or a press release with a legacy.
Like that people are calling it a ride, you never see a male astronaut who's going up in space and they said, oh, he took a ride. We actually duplicated the route that Alan Shepard did. That's why it's called, this particular capsule is called the New Shepard. We duplicated that route. No one said he took that ride. Yeah. It's always referred to as a flight or a journey. So I feel that that's a little disrespectful to what the mission was and what the work that Blue Origin does.
Gayle, let's hear that again. Gayle, let's hear those poignant words again, Gayle.
Work of real progress. Let's not confuse a photo op with a frontier or a press release with a legacy.
Like that people are calling it a ride, you never see a male astronaut who's going up in space and they said, oh, he took a ride. We actually duplicated the route that Alan Shepard did. That's why it's called, this particular capsule is called the New Shepard. We duplicated that route. No one said he took that ride. Yeah. It's always referred to as a flight or a journey. So I feel that that's a little disrespectful to what the mission was and what the work that Blue Origin does.
All right. One more time for the hat trick, guys. Those are some powerful words Gayle said, and I'll close this with some words by former President John F. Kennedy. One more time, Gayle.
Or a press release with a legacy.
Like that people are calling it a ride. A ride, you never see a male astronaut who's going up in space and they said, oh, he took a ride. We actually duplicated the route that Alan Shepard did. That's why it's called, this particular capsule is called the New Shepard. We duplicated that route. No one said he took that ride.
Yeah.
It's always referred to as a flight or a journey. So I feel that that's a little disrespectful to what the mission was and what the work that Blue Origin does.
All right.
Why is Amazon?
Thank you, Dr. Sowell and Gayle, for that. So I think Dr. Sowell's keep in mind, Dr. Sowell, he's like 90, he's like in his early 90s. Like he's still writing essays and doing interviews and doing analyses of things. And dude has written many books. I've just read like 1.5, but again, lots of critics, lots of supporters. But I think at the very least, Dr. Thomas Sowell makes us all think. Okay. And I said I was going to invoke a line from John F. Kennedy, one of my favorites. For some reason, over the holiday season, I took an interest in the assassination. So I find myself watching a lot of videos on the John F. Kennedy assassination. There's a lot of physics in that as well. Was there one shooter? Was there two? Where did the first bullet come from? The bullet that hit him in the head? Where did that come from? But JFK gave a lot of really good speeches, and relating to going to the moon, that was the thing at the time. One of my favorite JFK quotes is, "We don't choose to go to the moon because it's easy. We choose to go because it's hard. We do it because it's hard." So a lot of work goes into aerospace and the space programs, and I think that's one of the things underpinning this whole thing. Okay, was it a trip? Was it a flight, an actual flight mission? It was more of a trip. Sorry, Gayle, but it was more of a trip. All right, we're going to end with a few words from Terrence Howard. Salute the Passport OG. He was the first one to, Terrence Howard made the rounds on a lot of, on Joe Rogan and other podcasts over the last 2 years. He has a real interest in science and physics, and apparently he has a lot of projects going on. I overlooked it right away because I thought when I listened to him talk, I was like, what's this guy talking about? But my brother last week said, hey, Terrence Howard, he's on to some big things. And so I'm gonna take another look at Terrence Howard's ideas and some of his projects, because he has projects, actual science projects. And he has some very, very strong opinions about physics and where the field is going wrong and where it should be going. And my brother shared, shout out to my brother Amal, he's like in some instances, the cook in the kitchen for my content, all my stuff. But he said that Terrence originally wanted to be a scientist, but he chose acting because I think his mother, for social acceptance, he chose acting for that. But he never, as we're seeing, he never lost his love for science and mathematics and those things. So we're gonna this is him on Demystify Sci. For those of you who are unfamiliar with it, Demystify Sci is a podcast where a couple, I've watched it a couple times. Dr. Richard Lindzen was on there. I can't think of their names. The man and the woman who host this. They're on the West Coast, but it's a podcast. So Terrence Howard went on to Demystify Sci. We're just going to watch a few minutes. I was listening to this last night as I was driving back from having cigars with Officer Faulkner. And then I'm going to wrap the stream up because I'm trying to pack a bunch of things into this Saturday. Fair use, fair use. I apologize to Terrence Howard for not taking you seriously initially, but I will be keeping my eyes on your work going forward. Once again, salute the Passport OG for enlightening me to the fact that Terrence Howard has an interest in science. Very used, very used. This is from Demystify Sci, and it's called Balancing Scientific Knowledge and Spiritual Beliefs.
Understand how civilizations work, sometimes in the darkest ways. And he writes, there's nothing more difficult to plan, more doubtful of success, more dangerous to manage than the creation of a new system. The innovator has the enmity of all who profit by the preservation of the old system, and only lukewarm defenders by those who would gain by the new system. So you're always up against this behemoth of essentially what amounts to a bureaucracy, right? People who are perfectly happy and comfy with the old way of doing things. I had this buddy in grad school. I would be discussing the things we're discussing today. You know, physics needs physical mediators, right? And I would just, he was a mathematical physicist. And I would just always be trying to explain to him why it was important. And I was, I wasn't as good at it back then as I am now. But he would, at the end of the day, he was always just like, nah, like, I think that the field equations are fine. I don't see it. It's nice. And he's really good at them, by the way, right? So it's like, well, if I've learned all this, I've taken all these years to master this one way of doing things, I'm not really interested in changing how I'm doing this.
So the last part of that quote, the lukewarm support of those who would benefit from the new system, I think is also telling, because you lose a lot reputationally if you support something that is considered to be crazy or out there or whatever other negative thing you can use to describe it. And
so the hosts for Demystify Sci are Dr. Michael Shiloh DeLay and Dr. Anastasia Bendaviri. So out of respect to them, I just wanted to look this up. So again, Dr. Michael Shiloh DeLay and Dr. Anastasia Bendaviri, according to AI on Google, together they explore complex scientific theories through interviews with leading thinkers. They discuss diverse topics including Science 2.0, AI risks, and the nature of reality according to their YouTube channel and other sources. Okay, so she's going to say a few more words, and then they're going to hand it over to Terrence, but they're talking about the old guard in terms of understanding physics and the natural world versus some of these ideas that Terrence is trying to usher in. Terrence and others.
And so even the people who would prefer to see a new system in place tend to demonstrate outwardly their loyalty to the existing system because it supports them in some way. And they know that they can get a piece of the behemoth by just going along with what the story already is.
Well, if we think about the behemoth and the power structures that exist, they're not as powerful as we consider them to be. The only power they have is the power that we give them by subscribing to their authority. But when you come up with a system that challenges their authority, then that power goes back into the people, and the people, no matter, they may call it lukewarm, but it's a burning hot ember inside of them because they want the freedom that comes with being able to manipulate the periodic table according to your own will. They want the freedom of being able to utilize new forms of energy.
They want to live good lives.
So they are like, please, like I've heard so many people come up to me and say, no matter what they did and trying to tell you, stop teaching, don't share these things, it's worthless. They're like, no, we need it. I wanted it. I've been looking for this. I'm going to pass this on to my kids. Please keep sharing. Please keep teaching. That's why I did a long wait after the last interview and was a little resistant on doing this because I was attacked by so much.
So there were a lot of attacks on his intellect and his scientific acumen, but again, I will pay closer attention to his ideas and what he's talking about. When I was home, my brother did say that he had some ideas and some inventions, some projects relating to energy. So whenever historically looking at this country, there are certain, I'll call them bedrock industries. The pharmaceutical industry, the energy industry, the medical industry. There are certain industries that our country is built on, and if you're creating something or building something or proposing something that will disrupt those industries, those sectors, then you're either going to be suppressed or ostracized, or you may end up disappearing altogether. Okay. All right. I'm just about done. Let's finish this little snippet here.
But hearing all of those comments, I'm like, no, I'm not doing this for me. I'm like Ezekiel's bones. If he's going to, like, I'm not going to speak God's word. I'm not going to speak God's word. I'm going to stay up here. And it was burning up within him to where he had to go and speak the words. So I'm at this point now where this is why I was put on the planet, and I'm going to share this. And I believe that so much was given to me in this light so that it would be overwhelming evidence. It wasn't like just this one thing, which would have been more than enough as being able to define the electromagnetic field and its interactions. This would have been enough for Da Vinci, for anyone, but to be given that and all of the other things at one point, and I clearly say it did not come from me. I clearly say that I'm not the person that devised this, that I was just following my hands, that I was awakened in this. I believe all of this extra stuff, this is more than walking on water to define the dark matter, or what some would call the dark matter, if these wave conjugations describe those. It's more than walking on water to prove that the Platonic solids are averages and approximations, and to have other things that replace the Platonic solids that actually have a better prediction and has a grand unified supersymmetry. That's more than raising the dead to do that, to be able to say, okay, your math is wrong, and this is why it's wrong because of these contradictions.
So when I was listening to this, I think one of the concepts that he's challenging is that of waves and particles. I was able to distill that out last night. Waves and particles. I think that's something he's questioning, and that is a staple in physics and chemistry. Waves and particles. So Passport OG says, Jibba Jabba 809 says, question, have you discussed the ether and other 4 basic elements? Thanks. No, Jibba Jabba. These are concepts. Some of these concepts are new to me, so I'll be learning these along with you all. Well, it sounds like you're familiar with it. But that will likely be a future direction the more I listen to what Terrance has to say. Passport OG says, when I see him, wonder what he could have been after a couple of years of calculus and advanced engineering. It's hard to articulate your advanced ideas without the basics. It's hard to go backwards at 40. Okay, I'm going to play the rest of the segment that I'm going to wrap up.
That has never occurred in the history of mankind. This moment right here, where this overwhelming evidence with all the overwhelming proof has been here, so they should recognize what's before them. They should recognize the time that's before them. And if they fail to do so, it just means that they won't be a part of the future, because this is the future. This is happening. This isn't going away. The old system is dying. The standard model is dead. And everyone that's still trying to hide underneath it is just going to be crushed underneath the mounds of dirt that's going to cover it, and they will be erased in history. But those individuals that care about the truth and the wave and the way, those are the ones that are going to be a part of the future. And this stuff right here, like Ed Franco said when he was talking to me about Neil deGrasse, and he respects Neil. He was like, Neil, he said, don't worry about Neil. He's done a good thing. But he said, but you're going to be remembered for this.
I think it's really hard on people though, because it might be 100 years, 1,000 years before these any of these revolutionary ideas. Like we have a real good friend who's been on the show a bunch, who has a really beautiful reconception of some fundamental problems with the sun. And shout out to Pierre Marie. And I think it really tortures him that he knows he's right about some of this stuff, but he's never going to get that Nobel Prize. There's no way he ever. And actually, our friend Jim calculated he should probably get something like 8 or 9 Nobel Prizes for all the things he's done. And it's really sad, I think, because people who are outside of this system often, they realize that they're not going to get that, you know.
Why do they want it?
Okay. I think that's a good place to stop. It's a place where I need to stop. So I only got partway through that interview. The link is below in case you guys want to watch it. That is that. Give me a second here. It's over an hour. Oh, that's the wrong one. Let me close that. This discussion is, wow. It's 2 hours and 50 minutes. So I only got probably a quarter of the way through last night. So I'm going to keep listening to that. And yeah, I will report back what I hear from that. So apparently there's an old guard, a system of physics and chemistry and the real world that we've classically been taught, but there are new ideas and paradigms that are fighting to get up on the stage and maybe overturn what we thought was. So let's see what happens there. Let's see what happens there, because science is always supposed to evolve and our understandings are always supposed to evolve and improve. Let's see. Jibba Jabba 809 says Terrence is a deep man, deep in thought. He says same here, always learning. T. Riddler says, can you drive home the point you want to get across with this Terrence Howard piece? So T. Riddler. So I don't know if you took a pause about 10 minutes ago, but I was just saying that last weekend my brother, who was a design and build guy himself, he said, hey, Terrence Howard is onto some big things. I acknowledged Passport OG for sharing with me that Terrence Howard has an interest in STEM and science. And if you recall, 2 years ago, he was kind of made fun of and belittled by he went on the Joe Rogan podcast. So coming out of that, I don't think people took him seriously. But my brother turned me on. He was talking about last weekend that Terrence Howard has some real life, world-changing ideas and inventions. Okay, so that snippet that we just watched was from the Demystify Science podcast, and what he was talking about was the fact that there are outdated and older ideas about physics and the natural world that need to be questioned, that need to be updated, but the establishment, because science itself is an establishment, they don't want these new ideas to be ushered in. So that's kind of why I showed that part. And that's kind of what they were talking about. Does that make sense? Does that make sense to any of you all out there? Because we're all at different levels here. And the gentleman right there at the end, he just talked about another guest who has been doing research on the sun, which conflicts with some of the ideas that we have about it right now. And he said this gentleman should win several Nobel Prizes. But when you're in much the same way Galileo, I believe it was Galileo, proposed that the Earth is not the center of the universe, not the center of our solar system, when you start bringing in ideas that challenge what's been accepted for a while, you're going to get pushback. Okay, it's not going to get accepted. And then when you bring in technologies that will topple whole industries, as I said, you're going to get suppressed. And don't be surprised if you disappear, if you know what I mean. That's what they said about Dr. Sebi. Dr. Sebi, apparently his death came shortly after he was coming up with natural cures for sicknesses that the pharmaceutical industry makes its living on. Okay. And I think that's a good place to stop. Okay, T. Riddler, I think we have some mutual understanding now. Okay, good. T. Riddler, I appreciate you being respectful. I know in some other chats you kind of like to run amok. T. Riddler, that's right. One theory is he came up missing. He disappeared because of this. Okay, and this is a whole industry. Jibba Jabba 809 says, I derided him. I didn't know he was more than Hollywood. I didn't know either. I didn't know either. We don't. BET, well, I don't watch BET anymore, but Black YouTube, Black Twitter, I don't think they even know. I mean, we know Terrence Howard from Iron Man and from Dead Presidents and from, hosting award shows with Taraji P. Henson, but, and the Best Man, we know him from the movies, but how much do they talk about his interest in science? We almost never hear about that until now. All right, everyone, that's it. I got to go. I'm going to try to cram a bunch of different things into this short weekend. Thank you for those of you who watched. Please smash that like button, especially if you're watching on the playback. If you want to make a donation to the channel, my Cash App and PayPal are below in the description box. They're on this ticker along with my Venmo and my Zelle. If you want a copy of my book, The Engineers, okay, I just had my first book signing last weekend in Buffalo. Hopefully it won't be the last. I am selling the hard copy I have to budget in the shipping. I haven't been budgeting the shipping in. You know what? For my YouTube subs, I'll do it. For the hardcover, $25. For the paperback, $22. That the shipping is built into that price. Just if you render payment to me, make sure you send me your mailing address along with the name you want the book signed to, and also the name to which you want it delivered. Me and Money Motion had a back and forth about that a couple of weeks ago. He's got his copy now, though. Sal says, prior to his Joe Rogan interview, a few actors stated Terrence Howard was brilliant. Okay, well, I was none the wiser. Thank you for sharing that, Sal. But I also think that that's a reflection of what, as Dr. Thomas Sowell discussed in that particular essay he just wrote and created a video from, the media presents certain things while keeping other things quiet. All right, everybody, I have to go. Next week, me and the nameless protagonist, we're going to talk about the mouse utopia experiments. He's talked about it, but it's never been discussed here on my platform. And it's very, very relevant for what's happening today in our world and in the Western countries in particular, the mouse utopia experiments. All right, everyone, thank you again for your viewership and your support. Please smash that like button. Please like, share, and subscribe. As always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Always try to do your best. Two things. This shirt, this is my original shirt, but I didn't make this shirt. This is from MPI. I got this at a science conference prior to the World Health Crisis. That's MPI labs, their contract labs in the Midwest. So they hosted a party at the Society of Toxicology conference. So that's where I got this from. I just wanted to give them attribution. I didn't make these. I like this, but I didn't make these. And also, if you guys have things you want to talk about, or you want me to cover, if you heard of something new and novel in the news during your week, don't hesitate to reach out to me, and also let me know what you think, or if you have ideas or thoughts in the comment section below. All right, everyone, enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and I will talk to you all, well, next week. All right, bye-bye.